Hey everyone, it's Andy. Before we hop into this episode, I just want to give everyone a heads up that there is a lot of audio interference. That's 100% my fault. I move around too much, and it causes the mic to just sound really weird. We're still uploading this episode because we think that the content is really good, but the interference is consistent throughout the episode. There are periods when it's not there and then periods when it's there. And so we just want to give you the heads up now so that you can make the decision whether you want to keep listening or not. We think it's a really good episode, but at the same time, we don't want to have you sit and wait and listen to a bunch of interference if that's not what you want. But again, we apologize for the inconvenience. I'm recording this after editing it, and so I'm going to go get a mic stand so this way we don't have to have this problem again. We might have a problem in the next episode, but we'll find out after I'm done editing it. Anyway, thank y'all. Keep popping.
Welcome to Poppin Predictions, where we believe most movies aren't over at the end, but are meant to be continued. You're here with Andy and Marqueze, where we ponder what happens in a story once the credits begin to roll. On today's episode, we will be reviewing the movie Palm Springs. Palm Springs is a 2020 Hulu original film that follows carefree Niles and reluctant maid of honor Sarah, who find themselves unable to escape the venue, themselves, or each other. This movie is rated R for sexual content, language throughout, drug use, and some violence. And as always, spoilers ahead. All right, Andy, you want to go ahead and give us a quick description of this film?
Yeah, so this movie kind of starts off. It's a day of my daughter's wedding. Going all Godfather like it's the day of my daughter's wedding. No, it takes place at I think it's at Tala's wedding, and it seems like a typical day. The wedding's happening. Andy Samberg's character Niles is there, and he's the only one that's like not dressed up. Like he's in kind of like a Hawaiian luau type of shirt. And they're doing their speeches. He's in a sort of broken relationship with this person who like doesn't really love him anymore. So they're like, she does this really like bimbo speech, which I know is like kind of sexist. But she does like this, like she's just like, when I Google marriage, like these are the two things that come up, and then she just like ends it, and like Tala is like, oh, you're done. Well, that's awkward, and then everyone starts clapping, and then the maid of honor Sarah comes, like she's like, maid of my sister has to come up and give a speech. So her sister's like, I didn't know I had to do a speech. Andy Samberg comes in, saves the day, does this really awesome speech. Which then he connects with Sarah the whole time. He's like staring her down. They go to have relations, quote unquote. And while they're about to get intimate, Andy, out of nowhere, an arrow came and hit Andy Samberg in the knee, just like Skyrim. No, I'm joking. I think it hit him in the back. They go into a portal, into like a cave rather, and Sarah's following Andy because he's getting attacked, and Andy's like, no, don't come after me. So Sarah comes in, looks into the cave with him. And that's when Sarah finds out that everything is a time loop. And so the entire events of the movie starts all over again. And the only people that remember everything, at least that we know of, are Niles, Sarah, the maid of honor, and his character Roy. And Andy Samberg is just kind of like existing while Sarah is trying to find a way out, and is trying to figure things out. And they kind of form like this relationship. Like I would say, like if Midsommar is about like a cosmic breakup, then I would say Palm Springs is like a cosmic relationship.
They like get together, like the opposite.
Get together, like, and that's just kind of like the general gist of the movie is that like Sarah's trying to get out, Niles is trying to stay. Eventually, they do escape from the time loop, and move on to the next day together as a couple.
Yeah. No, that was it was okay. So I personally was kind of surprised because, and I've told you this before, Andy, I'm not a huge Andy Samberg fan. I never liked Lonely Island. I tried to show Brooklyn Nine-Nine, can't do it.
Oh my gosh, you're breaking my heart here,
It's
man.
just his type of hot rod. Like none of that worked for me. Like I just,
No.
his type of comedy does not work for me. That being said, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. Like 20 minutes in, I was like, wow, why am I enjoying this? Like, this is...
that's kind of weird.
I thought this was actually pretty funny. I thought he did a good job. I liked his character that he played a lot. I think too many times he plays an overly eccentric character. Like that's just kind of the personality he highlights.
Yeah, he was a little more reserved,
especially in the first few scenes, because he was, supposed to be depressed because he was, constantly having to relive this day over and over by himself.
Well, you don't know that in the beginning of the movie, so like he's really like you think he's depressed because of his broken relationship, he's intimate with his girlfriend, and like he's not able to finish, and she's just kind of like doing it just to make him happy, but she's not really in it as well. So like your first initial thoughts are like, wow, like Niles is in a broken relationship.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just, I think that's what first attracted me, was just the fact that like his character wasn't overtly just ridiculous. His character wasn't like a clown, which I would consider most of his characters are very clown-like. This actually seemed like a real person. He was just dealing with stuff, and it was a really good acting job by him. Like I was like, okay, he's actually pulling this off pretty well. And so that was the first thing that attracted the film to me. That I was like, okay, this is actually a better film than I thought. And then I absolutely adore the lead actress, Kristen Milioti, I believe her name is, Milioti, who plays Sarah in this film. She is great. She does a great job in everything she's in, and I think she does a really great job in this movie too. She plays this very outsider character, and she almost in all her films, from what I could tell, it seems to play like the outsider. And so she plays this outsider character. Outsider for her family seems to kind of not like fit in correctly or whatever, and she's not really enjoying the wedding either or any of these things. And I think her character pairs with Andy Samberg so well, and they do create like a really good love story.
Exactly. Well, I mean, yeah, because Sarah's character, like Sarah, is almost like the black sheep of the family. Like she's the older sister, so like she's supposed to be like the role model, but like there are moments where you can tell that like the family doesn't approve of her. Like she might have some sort of alcohol problem because like throughout the movie, like even before the time loop event happened, like she wanted wine. Like she like was at the bar and she wanted her glass completely full, and the bartender was like, "This is not good wine." And she's like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine. I want this completely full." So the family could have viewed, she might have like alcohol problems. I think there was like a point where like they thought that she was on drugs again. So like obviously there is some sort of like past history with Sarah with some sort of like drug or alcohol issues that the family seems to look down on her for.
Yeah. It's like whatever it is, she's the black sheep for some reason or another. But okay, so what I loved most, I would say, about this movie is that it's kind of a classic young adult romance for, I really believe, kind of the modern day, like 2020, 2021, whatever, where it's you could sum this up as an existential crisis. Like, obviously, this movie blows it up and makes it an actual, true cosmic one where they're reliving every day. Therefore, there's no meaning to what they do. They kill themselves. They can't escape the world by killing themselves. They just have to like relive this meaningless day over and over and over, and nothing has any meaning whatsoever, which is once again why you figure out later on why Andy Samberg's character is kind of so depressed in the beginning of the film, just because he's living this meaningless day over and over and over.
Yeah, and you don't know how long he's been there. Like, that's what another thing about this movie that I really like is that when I first was watching this movie, I was like, oh, it's gonna be like another Groundhog Day type movie where like the person like goes through the stages of discovering that they're in a time loop. When like what I really like about this movie is that Niles has gone through it. day after day. We don't know how long he's been in the loop, like I was saying. So like he's already been kind of adjusted and acclimated to the time loop, and so he didn't mean to get Sarah involved, but he was able to get. We were able to kind of fast forward through like the whole like discovering you're in a time loop phase,
which I like. I love that you don't have to just like discover that. I love that like he's just you're thrown when he's already in it, and then he just will kind of he explains it to like you're almost viewing it through Sarah's eyes, whereas like you're like when he's teaching her about it, like they're really kind of teaching you about everything that's going on. But yeah, so like as I was mentioning, so what I so much love about this is that it's two young adults in an existential crisis who feel like their lives are meaningless, who are falling in love. And if you take out the cosmic aspect of this movie, that's real for for a lot of people. True. Our age, it's just they feel like life is meaningless, whatever, but they happen to find one person that makes it bearable. And there is a scene in this movie. So like every day they wake up in the same position, right? So Andy Samberg will wake up in his hotel room with his girlfriend or whatever, right? And for the first like part of the movie, it's just he's sad. Every time you see him, he's sad. But after reliving so many days with this new girl that he met, Sarah, and enjoying him so much, now every day he wakes up with a smile on his face. Even though the life is just as pointless, there's still nothing going on. There's still no forward momentum, but he's happier now because he has this person in his life. And that's what I thought was so cool.
Yeah, and I think what's really awesome about this film that I would like to dive into a little bit is just like they live each day like they have nothing to lose because they know that
they don't.
They know that it's gonna. They know that at the end of the day, like they're not like they're not gonna die by no matter what they do. Like they can drive headfirst into a tractor trailer. They can shoot each other with arrows. They can do whatever they want, or they can. But they know that the day is going to repeat over and over again, and they can start fresh. So like know it with that knowledge, like they pretty much live each day to the fullest. They like do choreographed dance numbers in like a dive bar, and everyone's like, why? Like, what is going on here? But like they just have so much fun, and so it's like to me, it's like imagine having that. It's that privilege, like. It's a curse in a sense, in like the immediate sense. It's like you can't progress in your life. Like you can never age, from at least from what we can tell. Like you can never age, you can never die, and you have to relive this one day over and over again. So like you're stuck in this one part of your life, but at the same time, you're able to use that to like learn a completely new topic. So like Sarah's character learns quantum physics, and like it would normally take people like a lifetime to get to the math, like the level that she was at, but because she's stuck in a time loop, she was able to do it. She was able to do it for we don't know how long it took her to do it, but like
she learned it. She ended up learning quantum physics.
Or like you could just do like whatever you want with that ability. So like I don't know, like there's like a beauty in the sense of like knowing that like you're stuck in a day and you have to keep on doing it over and over again.
You start to recognize the patterns. You start to recognize like, okay, if I do this, it's going to lead me to this. Like there's actually, so one of the things in the film is that at one point Sarah asks Niles, like, have we slept together? And he's like, no, we haven't. She's like, really? And he's like, nah, like we haven't slept together. And like they finally do, like at some point later on in the film. But then later on in the film, she actually finds out, like he tells her, okay, that wasn't the first time we slept together. And that he actually, because he was reliving that day over and over, he found out that if he went up to her and asked her for if she wanted a drink and then took her down to like this like hillside, that she would sleep with him. And so he's been doing that over and over and over because he recognized if he did these certain things, it'll lead to her sleeping with him. And so, yeah, that's just like one of the like being able to like relive the same day and over, you're able to realize if I do this or say this or do this, these people will react this way. And so you're actually able to start tuning life to like, even though it sucks to have to live it over and over, you're able to start tuning it to what you want it to be.
Yeah. I think something that's something that, again, that we talked a little bit about with this, but like I think some of the key difference between like Palm Springs and Groundhog Day, like for
I've
those
never
that
seen
like
Groundhog Day, believe it or not.
for those that are curious, I like Groundhog Day. I don't think it's like
Was that 70s?
I don't think it's
70s,
one of
80s?
those.
When did that come out?
I think it's 80s. I
Okay.
think it's 80s. I think 70 sounds
Yeah, that
too
sounds too
late,
early.
but
That
I
sounds
think
too
it's
early.
that sounds something that like is a major difference between Palm Springs and Groundhog Day. For those who've not seen Palm Springs yet, but are for some reason listening to this, is that Groundhog Day, like you have to like Bill Murray's character was able to end the day by doing like something good by like realizing that like he needed to do something good to end the time loop, where like Palm Springs literally pokes fun at that, and like Sarah you find out this during the movie, and actually if you pay close attention you notice Abe's
You're very
shirt
excited about this
in her bedroom.
you mentioned this multiple times.
But you find out that Abe, Tala's husband, had slept with Sarah the night before the wedding. And so during one of the time loop days, in order to try to test the theory of doing a good deed to break the time loop, Sarah whispers in Tala's ears about about something, and you don't know what she says, but you can speculate based off of Tala's reaction to things and how the events unfolded that A, it was bad, and B, that she probably whispered in Tala's ear about the affair that she had, based off of the reactions. But then she finds out, she wakes up the next day stuck in a time loop, and then did nothing. And then they also poke fun of it again when I think it was actually the first time loop day when Sarah is like, wait, I'm stuck in a time loop, and she's trying to go back to the cave when Niles is like, I'm the Antichrist. And there's like a huge earthquake going on behind him. And then like it actually was just the event that needed to happen to open up the cave. And he goes, there is no God. Like I just was messing with you. Like we needed to wait for that thing to happen. So like it almost like what I like about this movie is that it's almost like it's like scientific, quote unquote, like the way to get out of this is through science and not through some sort of like feel good story, you know, even though it turns into like a feel good story, like it's not like the way to get out.
Yeah, the getting out isn't like doing some loving act for the other, you know, or you know, being selfless. Like they're trying to do all these classic, you know, time loop tropes, and none of that's working. And yeah, like they got out through science, but it was like, I don't know, for me, where I saw like the bigger point of the film, like wasn't even whether they got out or not. Like Andy Samberg's character, Niles, like Niles did not. Like at the end, he's like, I don't care if we leave. He actually didn't, because like they have to like blow themselves up.
He wanted to stay.
So he's like, actually, like if we could just stay, like I'm fine as long as I have you. Like I could do this. Like I'd rather not risk blowing myself up. You know?
Yeah, I don't think it was a matter of like not wanting to risk blowing himself up. I think that like they reached the moment in their relationship where he was like, you know what, like this time loop thing sucks, but I'm having so much fun with you that like I don't want to risk going back to reality.
Yeah, where you might move on, you might go do other things. Like
exactly. He's been in there so long, he's forgot what he does for a living.
That
like,
was
he
wild.
Does not know what his job was, which makes me think that he's had to have been there for years. Like to be able to, maybe not years, but months.
If he legitimately forgot what his job was, then I would say years.
Because he couldn't remember.
I would say years.
Yeah,
he
legitimately could not. Like she asked him, like, "What do you do for a living?" And he sat there for like 5 seconds or so, and he's like, I don't remember. Like he just does not know what he does for a living, and so I'm thinking that this wedding probably was like 2 or 3 years in the past, and he's just been repeating it over and over again, which makes sense because when Sarah got stuck in a time loop with him, he was like, yeah, I have slept with so many people here, and then like makes her think that he slept with the dad, but he didn't actually sleep with the dad. It was just pretty fun. He was just pulling her leg on that one, but
yeah, no, it was he must have been there for a while. One thing I haven't mentioned though is that there's actually a third person also stuck in this time.
Right. I brought him up earlier, but I didn't talk too much about
Yeah.
him.
So this character's name is Roy. Roy is played by J.K. Simmons, who plays all his characters amazingly.
He's a
Yes,
stud.
100%. But yeah. So what? Do you want to explain this, like the story more so between him and Roy?
Yeah. So Roy and Niles meet during one of the time loops. Niles, for what we know, Niles is the very first person to get through the time loop, which if I remember correctly, the movie doesn't actually tell you how he got stuck in the time loop in the first place. They just kind of like we were saying, like they just take off from there. But Roy and Niles go on like a major coke bender. They're just like doing nothing but hardcore drugs. They're doing a whole bunch of wild stuff. And Roy is like, man, I don't want this night to ever end. And Niles takes Roy to the cave and he's like, now we don't have to worry about that. Like, and Roy then gets stuck in the time loop. And because of that, Roy is just hunting down Niles every chance he gets. Like, if Niles isn't sleeping with somebody, he's getting killed by Roy. Like, that's just how the time loops work. And so that's where like the whole like arrow into the knee situation came into play with getting Sarah stuck in the loop. As that was one of the attempts that Roy was taking to kill Niles, which was really funny because you would think like if I'm getting shot in the back by an arrow, that like I'm gonna freak out, but Niles is just like, dang it, Roy, like you suck, like you're a terrible person, Roy, I hate you, and like which is just confuses Sarah. Roy reaches this inner peace moment, like towards maybe 2/3 of the way through the movie. He reaches like this moment of peace where he's like, you know what, like I can live with my daughters, like I can see like my chick kids rather. I think he has a son. Like he can see them like all the time, like he doesn't have to worry about anything. But I think that he's also depressed being stuck in the loop because he knows that like he's not going to be able to walk his daughter down the aisle. He's just going to be just kind of stuck in this loop with his son burying a piece of poop that he found in the yard, and his daughter trying to be like a magical princess or something like that. So like he's very depressed about that kind of stuff, but he's also at peace with that because now he knows that like he has infinite time with his children.
Yeah, and well, what one thing is that like from what we could tell from all the characters is they would all be depressed and they're by themselves. Like
Yes,
regardless of like the realization of like I think just having another person to experience that with you is incredibly important, which is, I mean, it kind of surprises me. Like, I understand one, why Roy would be hunting him, because Roy's like, you did this to me. You trapped me in here for eternity.
That's like literally
yeah,
his motive.
Yeah.
Like, you did this to me, so I'm going to kill you every chance I get.
Get it, but at one point you think you would have to realize, like, you're the only person who could understand what I'm feeling. Like, I need to, like, you know, bond with you to some degree. But I can see, like, maybe, I mean, it might be more recent with him, so he maybe just still is full of anger, and so just needs to kill him a couple hundred more times before they finally come to that, you know, mutual. All right.
Yeah, I think that that's what ends up happening is that like he's killed him so many times that he's kind of realized like there's no point in killing him anymore because like there's just like he's like it's not going to fix anything, which is why Roy isn't too much of a character. Besides like the very beginning of the movie and then maybe 2/3 of the way through, because of the fact I think he comes to that realization like after the audience is involved, like he like because you don't see him, like he's not involved in any of the other time loops that I'm aware of, at the wedding at least. So I think he comes to that realization. He doesn't go to the wedding anymore after that. So I think that he's just like, you know, there's no point in doing this. And I think he does mention that he's glad that he has that Niles has somebody with him.
Yeah. Because I mean, I imagine like going through that with another person would still be weird, but like going through that by yourself, that has to be absolutely soul crushing.
Yeah.
Absolutely soul crushing.
Yeah, I got a question for you, and like, so, after watching this time loop, like this movie about a time loop, would you want to be in one as long as you had somebody with you that was going through it? And if so, like, is there like a particular day that you can think of that like you would want to do the time loop in?
There's a few things coming to mind right now. Yeah. Yeah, no, like, like, okay, so there's a few thoughts coming to mind of like, yes, this would be an ideal day with an ideal person for me to be stuck for the rest of my life if I had to like keep repeating this. That being said, there's no day that has been good enough in my life to where like I just even after 100 times it wouldn't get old, or or 1,000 or
That's
whatever,
true.
miserable, and eventually it'd be me and that person just trying to cope with that. So like I don't know, I there's no way I can find it being great, but I in terms of like your
What if it was by yourself?
Oh God, no, never. There's not a single day in my life I'd be by myself. Repeating that day over and over. I had to have somebody I could talk to about it, or at least like a therapist I could call, talk to about this.
That's true.
But what about you?
That's so funny because I've been thinking about this a lot, especially a lot after Palm Springs. It's not like I'm sitting on my couch before watching this movie and was like, I wonder what it'd be like if I was stuck in a time loop.
Time loop problems.
A whole separate podcast. But I think I think I would want to get stuck at some point, but I would also like want to know how to get out for like my particular situation, because I don't know if I'm like in like a Groundhog sort of time loop, or if I'm in a Palm Springs type time loop, or if I'm like just like in a completely different one. But I think I want to. And what's funny is that like with that in mind, like I'm thinking like what day would I want to get stuck in? And so like you could always go with like the typical like I want to go with like the best day of my life and like relive that over and over again. So like my first thought was like, not to say like this was like if I was to think back in my life like the best day of my life, but like because like there's so many days, but like one of my best days was like when I graduated from grad school, and just like having my family there and like reliving that moment. But I feel like if I were to graduate from grad school every single day for the rest of my life, for infinity rather, not even for the rest of my life, for infinity, I would probably get really bored of it. Like I think that like
it would become like your most hated memory probably eventually.
Exactly. So I feel like I would want to relive like a very boring day. Yeah. Like a day that like nothing happens. Yeah, exactly. Because like if I were to relive like let's say I were to relive any of these days right now where I'm just kind of hanging out on the couch like in between jobs, like if I knew that I was going to be stuck in this infinite pool where like I couldn't do anything, then like honestly I would live it up. Like we got like COVID going on, but like if I knew that I was just going to repeat everything, then like I would just go and live my best life. Now, granted, the downside of that is that, even though I would relive everything and everyone would forget, like there's a good chance that I would end up catching COVID, because like they said, like the things that happen to you, like stick with you. But I also don't know if like diseases carry over. Like I know that they say that memories do, but I would also like to think that maybe diseases don't, because like if they were, then you would imagine that like Niles and Sarah would be completely scarred up because of everything that they did in the time loop. So like maybe being stuck in a time loop would be a way to like not catch COVID, because like you might catch it for a day, but like if you only have it for like a day, then like you're not going to feel anything. So like I would imagine like it's like when you first start feeling cold, like you're not going to feel sick the whole day. So like honestly, I would just travel. I would probably pick like a very mundane day that like nothing happened, and then just like make the most out of it.
I would constantly see how far I could get in that 12, 24-hour period, whatever it is. Like
I know, right?
how far can I reach in one day? Like, can I get the opposite of
Well,
the
what
world?
sucks is that like you probably couldn't travel too far because anytime that you fall asleep, like it's not like at the end of the
Oh yeah, it's
day
fall
that
asleep. Yeah,
like
so
the
I would
time
try to
to.
see how long I
It's
can stay up.
whenever you fall
How long can I
asleep.
stay up?
So it's like exactly. Now the funny thing would be like what happens if you stay up to midnight? Like
Mm.
is that like that would actually be a fun topic to explore
Mm-hmm.
because they don't touch that in the movie. Like they always fall asleep before midnight, at least that we can
Mm-hmm.
see. So like that would be a fun topic to see. Like, okay, like if I stay up, does that mean that time can progress? And if I'm up like for a week and time does progress, when I fall asleep, does it
Yeah,
automatically
that's
go
what I would.
backwards?
That's
That's
how
probably
if it's based on their sleep, that's how I would assume is that they could actually probably get to the next day, but then as soon as they fall asleep, bam, they're back there.
exactly. So I probably couldn't fly internationally, or like let me rephrase that. I probably couldn't fly to like Europe or like across the
Mm-hmm.
world, but like I might be able to fly to like Mexico or like some sort of like South American country or even Canada, but I might as well drive to Canada at this point. Um, and like be able to live my best life in these areas and then start it all over again because my bank account would just go back to wherever it was
Yeah,
the day before, you
yeah.
know?
Question. So, okay, yeah, no, that's interesting. All right, so I'm very curious. How do you predict this movie continuing? Because like we're dealing with time loops, time travel at one point. Like it's just like how do you see this going? I know you got something, so I'm very curious to hear this.
All right, you know what? You got me good. I always come prepared. So I think that a like what I was mentioning earlier that we know of in terms of characters being stuck in a time loop, we know for a fact that Niles, Sarah, and Roy are stuck in a time loop. I think that there are potentially more,
Oh,
if
shit.
not just one more character
Okay.
that is stuck in a time loop. I don't know how. I'm theorizing at least one more, but there could be more.
Okay.
The one character that I think is still in time loop, even after Niles and Sarah get out, is the grandma.
Okay.
And the reason why I think the grandma is stuck in the time loop is because every interaction, she's only in the movie for 2 scenes. She's only in the movie for 2 scenes. She's in the very beginning, or 2 or 3, whatever. She's in it in the very beginning after Niles gives a very passionate speech, and she mentions that she's been to a lot of weddings, which like on the surface is like, okay, she's a grandma. So like, and like throughout her life, like I'm sure she's been to many weddings, but what if she actually was referring to the fact that like it was that one wedding that she's been going to over and over again? And if you think about it, she's older. I don't know how old she is, but she is definitely appears to be in her 80s.
You think people age in the time loop?
I don't think they age in the time loop, and that's why I think that she wants that she's in it because
so she doesn't have to.
She doesn't have to. She doesn't have to pass along. But like, if you think about it, like all of her family's there. Like it's a very happy occasion. Everyone is happy. Like it's like
daughters,
except for Sarah,
sons, granddaughters, extended family, cousins.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Everyone is together. So I think Grandma is in the time loop, and then what I think also confirms that she's in the time loop, which again is one of those like you can take it at face value, but also if you want to have fun and think of it like that she's in the time loop. There's one of the time loops where Sarah does give a maid of honor speech. And so Sarah then goes off by herself. And then this is the other scene that I know of off the top of my head that the grandma was in. This is actually the last time loop day because this is right before Sarah tests out. Like, well, she already does test out, so she's going to do it on herself. Like the theory of the quantum physics that she discovered. But she's off by herself, and the grandma comes up to her, and she goes, "Well, I guess you'll be going now," which like could be in reference to Sarah leaving the wedding, but also could be a reference that the grandma knows that she's going to leave the time loop and like carry on with her life while the grandma is stuck in the time loop with everyone else.
Do you think the grandma initiated the time loop?
That's, I think that's
like, is she a physicist herself and like figured it out? Like, did the grandma?
I think that's interesting. I don't know for sure, and I think that would be really tough to try to speculate because of the fact that like the grandma is such a minor role. Like you like really don't know too much about her or her background. So like it shows that the at least to our knowledge that the time loop was started off of an earthquake. That like made the cave open and I'm assuming caused like a ripple in time that like had people get stuck in the time loop. Like that's what I think happens is like, well, like they show you the earthquake. So like, I don't know if the grandma can physically cause an earthquake to start the time loop, but maybe she does. But what I think happens at the end of the movie, Niles and Sarah are attached to C4 and they blow themselves up to blow them through the 3 to 4 second like gap that'll let them move on to the next day. They wake up in the pool that they go to every single time loop day, but this time it is the next day because the family who owns the pool is there and they're like, what are you doing here? So they realize after that point that they're out of the time loop. So what I think happens is they start celebrating. Like they're out of the time loop. They can finally live their best lives. Everyone else is out of the time loop, but grandma. Every single person is out and they're like, grandma's missing. And grandma. That's when Sarah realizes that grandma was like, wait, I guess you're leaving now. Grandma must be stuck in the time loop. And so Sarah has proven that she can move forward in time by like proving like, okay, if I blow C4 up like during this time gap, I can move forward. So I think Sarah finds a way to move back in time with Niles and help. In the second movie is about trying to convince grandma to leave the time loop so that she can age and be with the family in the present instead of reliving the past.
That's a great prediction, Andy. That's a great prediction. So almost kind of like a prequel, but also intermittent with like the actual film itself. That'd be I would love to see that prequel with the grandma that just realizes that this was like, and like who knows? Like I said, like you said, she's 80. Let's say she has like cancer, something that
exactly
go out. Like, why not relive a day when you're with all your family members?
Exactly. Or it's great to do that. And then like this way, you don't have to like go through like chemo or like go through any sort of pain or suffering, like as like an end, like this is your end story, just reliving like a very happy day over and over again.
Oh, that still sounds like a terrible ending to me. Like I would hate to go out like that. Like I would still even hate to go out by reliving my favorite day over and over. That still sounds like just too much, but I'm also not 80 and I'm about to die. So.
That's what Niles and Sarah would have to go back to try to convince the grandma to like that this isn't healthy. I think that's when we also discover maybe other characters are stuck in a time loop that we didn't realize were in the time loop. Like I would think it would be absolutely wild if Abe was actually in the time loop, or if like the bartender was stuck in the time loop. Like this is when we find out that other characters were there, were like aware of it the whole time, but
they just kept acting
because if I remember, like Abe did not seem super excited. Like he just kind of he just felt like it was going through the moments.
Yeah.
So it also wouldn't surprise me if like Abe.
But Abe also, why would he be super like a ton excited? He was also cheating with Sarah though, so it's like obviously.
But it's also his wedding day. Like you would imagine that he'd still have some level of excitement.
I mean, I think he had the right level of excitement for someone who was also willing to cheat with their bride sister the night before. Like, obviously, the marriage doesn't mean all that much to him. So, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, or do you have anything that you want to build on?
I mean, I think that's a solid idea. Especially that like I've been to many weddings, especially obviously could just be because of her age, but I like the idea of why would what's the word I'm looking for? Why would Niles have been the first one? Like, there's no reason to give us that Niles was the first one to experience that time loop. Very, very easily, it could have been somebody else. And I think the grandmother plot makes a ton of sense. Like, why would, like, she has all reason to do that and no reasons not to. And so,
yeah, I think Niles is the first person, and I think what I think happens is that Niles, like we were saying earlier, like he slept with a ton of people, and he's experimented with a ton of people. So what I think during one of the time loop days, like he had to, maybe he might have experimented with the grandmother, and like while having this conversation with her, like she's disclosing that, like, like maybe she does have cancer, or maybe she knows that she's going to die soon. And so maybe Niles doesn't tell Sarah that he got the grandma stuck in time loop because like he made a deal with her, like not to tell other people. But he wanted to make sure that like she, like, because she probably was telling her like how happy she was that she was there, and like this is probably like where she wants to be, like with her family, with her loved ones. And so Niles takes her to the cave and gets her stuck in the time loop, and I think that she's at peace with that, and she just agrees with Niles not to tell anyone about it.
Dude, I think you have a solid script for the next film.
All right, Lonely Island. If you want to connect with me, Andy.t.adler on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even think of something else. I think you perfectly nailed that. But
thank you. Thank you. I'm just dusting. I'm dusting my shoulders off here.
But no, I definitely want to repeat that. I definitely, like, if you haven't seen this film, I don't know why you're listening to this if you haven't, but if you haven't seen this film, I definitely recommend it. This is I think we had actually two people who recommended this film for us to do on the podcast, and so
do you remember who they were?
Yes, shout out Joseph is one of them, and then one was another one who will not be mentioned.
Okay.
But I've had multiple recommendations for the podcast.
That's fair. That's fair. Shout out to Joseph. You're awesome. Yes. Thank you for recommending this movie. This movie was a lot of fun.
Great. I'm definitely glad I watched it.
A nice change of pace to what we have been watching lately. And if you have been like sort of down lately, like I think Palm Springs is a really good movie to watch, which will transition us to our rating scale. So we haven't done a great job, and by we, I mean me, because I'm usually the one that talks about this, but we have a rating scale here on Poppin Predictions where we look at bags of popcorn and recommend a movie based off of the size. So if we don't like the movie, we'll give it a small, which is like maybe like a 1 to 3 for like those that want to do 1 out of 10. Like a medium is probably like a 4 to 6. A large is probably your 7 to 9, and then your big bucket is like 10 out of 10, like this 10 plus. Like you need to drop what you're doing right now, cancel your plans, and watch this movie. So with that in mind, Marqueze, where would you put this movie in our rating scale?
So if I'm rating this movie, I'm going to I'll give it a large, but it's a large with no butter though. Like it barely made a large.
Hey, okay, we're throwing butter in this.
If the butter's a plus and minus, it's like a minus. So it's a large minus. Okay. It's a large with no butter. It's like barely a large, and like that's not knocking the movie at all. Like. This is a rom-com. It's a very general rom-com in a way. And so in order for it to like really be great, it would have to have like stood out even way more than it did. That being said, I still think it was a good movie, and it's one of the better rom-coms I've seen of recent. And so, I mean, I'm still giving it a large. But it's nowhere close to being a solid large or nowhere close to being big bucket in my opinion. But whereas most rom-coms would probably get like medium, this is good.
Yeah. I 100% get where you're coming from. I remember when I was watching that movie, I was prepared to give it a medium because like I was comparing Palm Springs to like other movies that we have seen. not even just like in general, but just like for this podcast, like I'm comparing Palm Springs to like some of the other things that we've put on. And so like if I were to compare it to like that's why I was like prepared to come in with a medium. But you know what? Like you can't really do that, especially like when you're trying to just be fair to like this specific movie, to the genre, to those that like are interested in movies in general. I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to give this a large, but I'm going to give it a large with butter.
Okay.
You know, I'm not going to say like that. That's not me saying it's a large plus or anything. Like I'm just saying that it's a solid large for me. And the reason I'm giving it a solid large is because you know what, like it was really entertaining. The I think that like I had some issues with it, like the fact that Sarah self-taught herself like quantum physics, but at the same time, like if I'm remembering the fact that like she literally has infinite time, like
it's not
out of that far.
If you're
of
motivated, it's really not that far out of possibility.
Exactly, and like we have no idea how long they're in the time loop. We can try to guess based off of like the movie, but in reality, like there's no way we know how long they're in the time loop for. So like reality, she could have really taught herself quantum physics and all that stuff. And so, you know, it's a nice movie. It's cute. It's charming. It's got a lot of like, it's really funny. The acting is great. I really love this movie. And I think that if you watch this movie again, like you'll notice details. Like the first time I watched the movie, like I didn't notice anything super weird, but then the second time I was watching it with Susan and I noticed Abe's shirt. I know I said this already, but like I noticed Abe's shirt in the bedroom, so that like that's hinting to the affair. So I imagine that there's also probably some smaller details that like probably don't impact the plot greatly, but it's still like nice things to notice, that if you watch it again, it might be nice. And like I have no problem watching this movie again. Like I think that I would be thoroughly entertained each time I watch it. So I don't think it's big bucket material, because big bucket I think is reserved for those movies that like leave you like, wow, like I got something out of this experience. Like I feel like I'm a better or worse person because of this. And but it was solidly entertaining, and I have no problem telling people to go watch this movie.
There's another movie that I'm thinking about that has J.K. Simmons in it. That's an obvious big bucket that I definitely want to do for the podcast.
Spider-Man?
Yo, I forgot that he's in Spider-Man.
Parker!
I completely forgot that he was a Spider-Man. That's hilarious. But no.
The OG with Tobey Maguire. Which one?
Whiplash.
Whiplash? I've heard.
You've never seen Whiplash? Oh, we're 100% doing it for the podcast. All right, people, expect it within the next month or so. We're going to have Whiplash out here. This is...
Oh, goodness.
It's most people... I have a film friend. He works in like the film industry, and so he's a real like he's really about this. And Whiplash is number 3 on his top movies of ever list. Like it's rated number 3. And everyone I've talked to has loved it. It gets very high praise. So yes, we're gonna be doing that.
At top praise.
We're gonna be doing that at some time soon.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, let's whiplash back to this episode. And, you know, let's all take a minute to think of Palm Springs. It's beautiful. It's awesome. And
it's in California.
Think of California, you know, what would you do? If you were offered the opportunity to get stuck in a time loop, would you take it? What day would you all want to do? Do you agree with our prediction, our continuation of Palm Springs? Please subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to it. Follow us on Twitter at Poppin Predict and on Instagram at poppinpredictions.pod to let us know your thoughts and how you think this movie should continue. Until then, keep popping, everyone.
Peace.